Okay, today we're going to talk about aliases. Aliases is when you need to cover up the real name of the data and hide it behind what is known as an alias. So hopefully I'm dressed appropriately because I don't want you to know who I am. This is my alias. And so let's get into it right away. So we're going to be using from Murach's MySQL. We'll be using just in case you don't know my name, I'm Dr. Database, and I'm in disguise. We're going to use, and all the SQL that is going to be used, I will provide to you as well in a text file. I'm going to use the AP database, no problem there, and we're going to select from the invoices table the invoice ID and the invoice total. No problem there. We get the data as expected. We've done that bunches of times. And now what we're going to do is I'm going to add two additional columns to this. And we're taking both the invoice ID and we're going to describe it as normal, and then we're also going to use it, add two columns with an alias name as well. Notice we now have 4 columns, and the labels of the alias columns are now different. Invoice num and total are being used here from the replace part for that. What also we've done plenty of times before is we have done a select statement, and we've ordered by the actual column name. Here's invoice total, the actual column name. We by descend, and you'll see that the invoice totals are in descending order. No problem there, standard operating procedure. But now what we can also do is order by descending the alias column name, and here you can see that I'm ordering by the alias called total. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to remove the single quote from the alias part, and then I'm going to execute it. And what's been weird is sometimes it would actually fail and not run, and other times it ran fine. Sometimes it seems like when you make a change to the SQL statement and you run it the first time, it like throws an error. So just to be sure, execute it again and watch what happens. So here you can see that order by with the alias will work just fine. Now, the book talks about using some mathematical calculated fields and gives an example here. And here you can see I've created 4 columns, 6 plus 6, 6 minus 6, 6 times 6, and 6 divided by 6. Execute those, and we get 12, 0, 36, and 1. And that notice that the column names being displayed here are in fact the actual calculation. Now what I can do is I'm going to add an alias to each of these. And now notice already as I'm adding an alias to each of these that line 2 is got a little red X on it, and the word add is squigglied, and so something's wrong here. We got to figure that out, but I'm going to run it anyways, and you'll notice that it does in fact fail. Now what I will do is I will add a single quote around the word add. Notice now that my number 2 is no longer got a red X, and it's not squiggly, but now line number 5, the div for divide, has got it. Well, I'm going to run this anyways, and notice down here that it fails again. So now let's go ahead and put a single quote around div. Notice the red X is gone. Execute it. It runs fine, and my new column labels are displayed. Which brings us up to a very important best practice when doing aliases. Always wrap them in a single quote. Better safe than sorry. The reason is add and div were keywords within the database, and the database management system, got confused and said, what are you trying to do here? Add, ADD, and div, div, means something different to me. You can't use them as an alias. But if you force them as a literal string by putting them in quotes, as you can see, it works just fine. Now, one example that was brought up earlier, a student who shall be nameless, first letter A, last letter Y, but we don't want to say who she was, posted this SQL in the on Blackboard, and it failed. She was having problems with aliases. She had a couple of three different mathematical equations with the aliases starting without single quotes, and it failed. Well, the reason it failed was this. Put a comma after each one. Run the SQL, see that it fails, and then put a comma after each one of those, and don't forget your semicolon at the end. Now run it, and now it works just fine. So the basic syntax of her statement was fine, but it failed because of stupid little commas and semicolons. Now, another typo, notice this. Select invoice total from invoices as amount. If we run this statement, now what's interesting here is that invoice total here is actually showing and displaying from the invoices, but as amount, it's actually getting confused, and what's happening is that the table is being aliased. Now I'm going to try something. It's not in the SQL. If I go amount.invoices, invoice total, and then I run it, notice here that we are actually, excuse me, we're actually aliasing at this point the table name, not the column name. So if I was to say Fred, and then run it, it works fine. But if I want to alias now, make this a little prettier, easier to read, as Fred total, and then run that. Notice now I have Fred total on the column, but I'm referencing the table as the table Fred. And that's important, and we use that. You'll see like the letter I and the letter V and stuff like that when we do things with joins. But it also brings up and reinforces the whole issue is to make sure that you use single quotes around your alias labels. Select invoice total as amount from invoices, order by amount. Second click, notice I clicked it once, it didn't work. The second click, it worked fine. That seems to be a SQL bug. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the where clause to this. Now where amount is greater than 6,000, so we're hoping to get all the invoices that are over $6,000. Now, no matter how many times I click it, notice down here, it's errors. It is not liking on the where clause, it is not liking to use the alias. However, a hidden known secret is change where to having and run it, and it works just fine. that now we have all the invoices ordered in descending amount. Wait a minute. Order by descending. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, ordered in descending amount. We have them with greater than 6,000 with the halving clause. I was getting thrown by this 8,000 right here, but it's only, that's a decimal point off. So the halving gives us what we actually want and we're expecting in the where clause. Also, a really good link was provided in the class. And, oops, actually not letting me cut and paste the link. So let's go right here, boom, Control C. Problem with the aliases, and as always, if you Google something, you can definitely find answers and questions to what you need. Now, what happened next was went and created a view. So here we're creating a view from the invoices table, and we're going to alias a couple of the columns. So now the view is created. The reason I'm getting an error is because my view already exists. I had already created it. I forgot to drop the view. So the view exists. And now I'm going to check out the view. Just look at the view generically. There's all the data. Notice that the column names are amount and num. And I can even take a look at the description, describe the view. And amount and num happened. And then what happened was the person doing this was still in this, hey, I'm working with my aliases kind of view, and the name of that view, notice, was my test. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select I'm going to select, and what I want to do is I want to get rid of that right now, or amount. This is still boom. Let's typo on my part. Num there. Select amount from, oh, helps if I get rid of that. There. So now amount and num from my test, where amount is greater than 1,000, that works. But we're not dealing with aliases at this point. We are actually dealing with the actual column names from the view. An alias isn't even in play here. But even though you created the view from or using aliases. So now now what will happen is if I try to select the view but implement an alias on the column, called my amount, we're going to have that whole issue again with it failing, where the where clause doesn't like it. But if we change the where clause to having, and then click it a couple of times, the having will work with the alias. Select amount as my amount, my test, my amount having my amount greater than. That's the actual code. That works fine. Now, an example was given in the class by another student using this SQL, actually doing a join. And here, the actual column names are being used, and we'll get a correct, let's see, credit total. What do I got going on? Okay, that works just fine. Now, but again, the alias balance due is here. But now if I change the where clause and I use the word right here instead of the actual field names to balance due, I get errors. It doesn't like using the alias. But now if I change the where to having, works just fine. So you've got a little bit of SQL to play with. You understand that, one, typos matter, commas and semicolons. Aliases are not a friendly matter when it comes to the where clause, and but you can replace the where clause with the having clause. So hopefully this video has helped. Have a great day.